Hello, everybody. Welcome to another live stream brought to you by One Accord the Guild. We are continuing our summer series with today we're going to be doing some Minecraft, and we're actually going to have a discussion here over a pretty interesting topic, and that is over free will, the concept of free will, the idea of free will within a Christian mindset. And today we actually have a few people joining me, as you can see. Guys, if you want to introduce yourselves, maybe we can start with, someone just go ahead. You're all muted, by the way.
Don't everybody jump in at once.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hey.
All right, so I think I'm the only one who's going to be on camera this evening. Everyone else is going to be just joining by audio. So we're going to play Minecraft. We're going to continue building Egypt, different parts of it, and kind of go into our discussion. I'll introduce it a little bit, but I hope those of you who are watching, you're blessed by this, whether you're live, whether it's by replay. And if you're watching, tuning in, please write questions in the chat. We'll do our best to get to them. If you don't have any questions, just say hi. Ask us how we're doing. We'll ask you how we're doing too. But just let us know that you're here. All right. All right. So let me add my screen here. Okay. So how's everybody else's day been?
Just chill. But,
Just cool.
not
Kind of
a
tired.
lot going on.
It seems like everybody's kind of tired or
Yeah.
flagging.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I've had a
I'll tend to
migraine today,
respond,
so
I was at the church actually trying to help with the AV booth sound. There's always something up going on, so had to help out with that.
it's nice.
Dude, there's always something going on with AV, like always.
At least that's what it seems like in my experience.
Yeah. No, you're not wrong. There is always something going on with it. I'm gonna remove these. I don't know if you added these stairs, but I'm gonna remove just the under part here.
Okay.
Just because why not?
I mean, the gold you're saying?
No, there was like extra stair here. I'm looking at the pictures of what the interior of what an Egyptian home looked like, and I'm just kind of trying to replicate it as best as I can here.
Okay. You do that then.
Is this stream coming through the video or my tablet?
Yeah, I can see it, but we can only have one person sharing at a time.
Yeah. No, that's
Yeah.
fine. I'm just wondering if it was coming through.
Yeah,
on my
yeah,
side.
actually it totally is.
We could add it, in a
Because I
little
only
bit.
see my window as nothing. Like I see all the other ones as smaller windows.
Yeah.
I don't see mine.
I see. If you scroll down, you can probably see it.
Oh, we just.
No, I see my window. I just see me, like my
Oh.
icon talking.
Okay,
Yeah, like that.
Yeah, that's there.
there it is.
Then we can't.
Okay. But you can come back when there's more of an update. This is
Alright.
where we are at so far.
Oh, nice. What you working on?
Just a face.
A face.
A face. Going for a pretty face. Something easy. Well, not easy to draw. Just easy to look at.
All right, so then let's just kind of go into this topic here. What have you guys heard as reasons for why free will doesn't exist? Like, because a lot of people argue that free will is not possible with a God like the one that is in the Bible, right? What are some of the main reasons why people might say that?
I think a lot of them pull from other verses that talk about judgment, as in like, well, the God of the Bible is like do this or else type mentality. so it's like if we have to do something or God's going to punish us, then that's not really a choice.
Hmm.
So
I could see that. I could see a lot of people having an issue with that. You know, what I've seen or heard of a lot are people saying, you know, if how is God good or how is God just if he has not provided, you know, sufficient evidence for me to believe him, right? And if I don't accept, you know, this lack of evidence and I go to hell for it, doesn't that make God like a bad person? Have you heard something
Yes.
along those lines before?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Although I think a lot of times that idea of evidence, it's like, what does it even mean? Because like first one person evidence is like it could be some arbitrary thing that might never happen. So why they're just it's like almost like they're trying to find an excuse not to believe. So it's like I don't know. Or sometimes the evidence can be right there in front of them, but they don't want to accept it. You know.
Right.
Is it possible that the problem isn't the evidence, but the paradigm or the lens that we're looking at it through?
It's a human lens. Do you mean like in general?
Or let's say like this. Okay, so Christians will approach the Bible, right, with kind of the lens that God exists, right? That all this happened because God said it, right?
Hmm.
And then there'll be those who approach, you know, let's take for example the flood, right?
Hmm.
You know, a lot of atheists have an issue with the flood. Like a lot of them believe it didn't actually happen, or at least to the scale the Bible mentions it happened, right?
Right.
And so when we've been presented with evidence about a flood, about, you know, perhaps there's in modern day Turkey, you know, there's still debate whether they found the ark or not. You know, there's also scientists who have found types of sediment that is uniform across the whole earth, right? The way that certain animals were buried very quickly underwater. You know, there's all this type of evidence that when, you know, we as Christians see it, we're like, you know what? That's clearly evidence of the flood to me, right? Because we're approaching that subject or that topic or that evidence kind of with the paradigm that, you know, God exists. Now, a lot of atheists, I'm not saying every single one, and I'm not trying to generalize here, but a lot of non-believers will approach this subject with the paradigm that no, God's not real. So whatever evidence that you present to me, it doesn't prove that God is real, and I'm going to do whatever I can to show that.
Hmm.
That's what I refer to like the paradigm.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting because like it's kind of like I feel like it's almost like a self-defeating kind of like to even argue with someone who has a different paradigm because like so like our paradigm, okay, God exists, theirs God doesn't exist, so it's like they're just gonna people who are really like how you could say like they're just their mind is already made up, you know, for that. It's kind of really hard to really, you know, change that.
That's true.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, a lot of times someone's mind is already made up on this topic, especially when it comes to whether God is real, whether this evidence or what I'm looking at here actually points to a God, right? They're already approaching it with no, God's not real, and so this could easily be explained as something else. Anybody else want to add to that?
I mean, I my audio cut out, so I missed a lot, and maybe somebody else already brought this up. But I think when we're looking at evidence, I think how we interpret things to be evidence can also play a part in that. Because a lot of times we might say, well, that happened, but that was dumb luck. Versus, I guess, what do we define as evidence, or what do we say is evidence of God doing something? Does that make sense?
That's a good question. How do we define evidence? All right, that is a really good, interesting topic, interesting question as well, right? And we have someone in the chat, Eli. He says free will definitely exists, but of course there are many factors in our lives that can very strongly influence us towards one direction.
Mm.
The music group?
I thought for a second I thought I'm not the only one seeing that fun.
I mean,
Eli's
I
like, yeah,
guess.
that's totally what I was talking about.
That's what he was talking about. No judgment. It's all right, Eli. They're pretty good.
Funny.
Yeah, and I think to kind of play off of that too, those we have influencing us. It's like it's kind of like the idea if you grew up around, let's just say, a society that said, "Oh, the moon is actually what's like the moon is actually a light bulb that floats in the sky." Just terrible analogy, but let's just say everyone you grew up with thought that. And then one day you came across somebody that was like, "No, what are you talking about? The moon is reflecting the light from the sun." And you were like, "That's silly. Everybody knows it's a light bulb in the sky." Like, the opinions and perspectives of those around us have an impact on our development and understanding of what something is. So if we've never been exposed to a different thought of something, then we might have an opinion that we realize isn't actually ours. It's kind of just something that we've assumed because everybody around us said it was that way, versus actually thinking or actually breaking it down for ourselves.
Now, is it possible for Christians to kind of get in that position as well?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, they like that debate over a flat Earth or whatever. That sounds like something like that. I don't know.
or like to say that it's like, oh well, God is a vengeful God and he's going to burn everybody with fire.
Yeah,
I hear that a lot, and that one really bugs me because I think that people are missing that sin can't exist in God's presence, and so the person would literally burn up in his presence. Not that God is doing it. It's literally that amount of sin can't exist in his presence. I mean,
it's like light and dark.
Moses had to, hang out on the mountain for over a month just to get the 10 Commandments, from God. And that was because he had to be purifying himself and atoning and praying and asking for forgiveness for all his sins, which were extensive, So it's not that God's being vengeful and oh, I'm gonna kill you now because you've been so sinful. That's not it at all. It's just that
you've been naughty. It's
that I think it's more like a love thing. Like, hey, I want to help you if you'll let me, but you can't exist. You can't not exist in my realm. Like, let's say his realm is heaven, okay? Just for this discussion. You cannot exist in heaven with me and still be sinful. It won't work. You will die. Not because I want you to die, but because you will die. That's just how,
Right. So I guess in the way, but how does that relate to the idea of free will? Like when we're looking at how Christians view God and free will. Well, I guess that would tie back into the fact that it's like, well, we don't really have free will. It's like either we're chosen to be saved or not be saved.
I think we are all chosen to be saved. But because God is God, he has an infinite amount of possibilities, of choices that we can make at any given one moment in time, And because it's happening in such a way, for us, it's happening in a very slow state, because we're going through time in a very different rate than he is.
Yeah.
Our sense of time is very different. But for us, he can see the infinite amount of answers to a decision we might make. And yet at the same time, I think he has at least an inkling of this is the decision you're going to make. But it's not that I necessarily know that. It's because I know how you grew up. I know your influences. I know, all these things that have influenced you that you don't even know have influenced you.
Mm.
Like he sees all of that stuff and he can go, okay, she's going to choose A. I just know she's going to choose A because I've seen 1,000 other people choose A because of these influences and because of this, perceptions that she has about herself or life or her entire existence. So she's going to choose A. Do I want her to choose A? No. I'd actually C would be a lot better for her. She'd choose E,
Mm.
And if she chose E, she'd be a lot happier. But I don't think I can make her choose E. Any way I tried to make her choose E, she'll just still choose A. And if she chooses B, that would be much worse. So I'd just rather her choose A.
Mm.
Okay, sorry, that was a bit of a rant, but this has been on my mind lately.
Yeah. An analogy I thought of too is kind of like, what people decide to do, like their thoughts. That it's kind of like It's like starting a domino, like type of thing. Or when you line up dominoes in a certain way, and then if you push it, you could see how the dominoes are gonna fall or something. So I kind of see it like God's foreknowledge, kind of like that, and he could see like infinitely in advance, like where those dominoes
Exactly.
are gonna fall based on people's decisions. So
Yeah.
that's how it works.
But it's all those influences too that we don't even know are influencing us,
Yeah, you could say each domino is an influence.
Yeah. But there's so many influences that we have in childhood that we don't even know are influences. Like we have absolutely no idea what they are because we were too young to even fathom them, Yeah. But they are influencing us. They are becoming a part of us and who we are, and even like a part of our core belief system.
Yeah, that was something interesting that you said, Murray. You said, I think that we're all chosen. Is that what you said? I think you said something along those lines.
Yeah, I think we are all chosen to be saved. Every single one of us is chosen to be saved. I think what happens is that we inevitably, as humans, will do something to mess that up at some point,
It's like we opt out.
Yeah, like you opt out because, and granted, this is just my opinion. This could be totally wrong. But like I think of, how in the Jewish Hebrew world, there's like the age where now you're accountable for yourself. And of course, what do? They have a big bar mitzvah to celebrate this whole thing. Because now you are accountable. You are no longer a child. You are accountable for your actions. And that changes things for you, having gone through that. So it's like the age of accountability. And there's a lot of other cultures over in history that have had that same, they have that same basis for belief. There's an age of responsibility. Is God going to hold a child who doesn't understand between right and wrong yet, 100%? Is he going to hold them accountable? No, of course not, because he's a loving God and he knows that they don't have that capability. Like it's not even part of their brain power yet. So there's no way he would do that. But I do think that I think that people are, I don't know how to say this. I don't know. I think people don't give God enough credit for his plans. And then sometimes it's too much credit too. In fact, that saying like, oh, I don't have a part in it because, God's already chosen my path and it's already a done deal. Well, no, you can still choose. That's what free will is. That's the whole point of free will.
That's when they say, sorry, can you hear me? I changed mics.
Yeah.
I can hear you.
Okay. That's when you get that idea where it's like once saved, always saved.
Yes.
People are like, oh yeah, I've been baptized, been saved. And I actually heard someone say this once. They were like, telling their this pastor, they were like, yeah, I really need some help with my husband. It's like, he's going around, he's like sleeping with all these other women, and it's just it really hurts me, and I hate seeing him do it. And he's like, oh, so are you worried about their salvation? And they were like, no, I'm not worried about their salvation. They've already been baptized. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Like,
Oh,
Interesting.
it's like,
okay.
so in their minds, it's like they've been baptized, they're saved, but it's like, but you're still causing emotional pain to your spouse. And so it's like, so I think, this idea of well, once my salvation is locked in, then I can't lose it, doesn't make sense, especially if you're looking at it from the Bible, because it's like Solomon, Saul, not Solomon, but King Saul, was chosen by God, and then he ended up dying from, and he was told how he would die by going to see a medium. So it's like the way that people respond with that is, oh, then he wasn't really saved, right? And it's like, well, but then how do we know? There's no sense, there's no free will if that's the case, where it's like you just have to assume that you're either saved or not saved, and you won't know until you get there. It's like, well, it doesn't make sense in my mind. It doesn't sound fair.
That's where the Calvinist viewpoint with how free will works and the elect, that's where that falls apart.
Yeah.
Something that Murray said about the way that like if you're going to be saved, then God, that's something about everybody being saved, and then you choose to reject it. There's the concept of corporate solidarity in Christ, meaning that in order for anybody to be saved by Jesus had to save everyone, just point blank, like the whole world. So if one person saved, you're all saved.
Which he did. Jesus Christ came down and
right, yeah, and that's where we get the universal text. God so loved the world that he gave his only son. So, yeah, and I think that's where what's missing from a lot of the free will argument is like that it's not seen how it's assumed that like, oh, well, it's just like sin, like people's misdeeds that need to be atoned for. Whereas, well, no, it's much more than that. Yeah, that's part of it, but it's that Jesus didn't just die for people's sins. It's that he became the condition of sin. He, became the second Adam. Where Adam fell, Christ undid that and became a second Adam, and he allows the condition of sin, not just the ability to sin, but the actual like state of separation from God that Adam brought on the whole of humanity. He allowed that actual condition to be put to death in Jesus, and thereby, anybody who believes that, it's been granted to everybody because everybody's in that condition. So, that ministry of reconciliation, as it's often called, is available to everyone because the condition is no longer a part of the human story because Christ undid it. Then it's available. That's how it's available to everybody. If Jesus didn't die for everybody, then we couldn't go around saying to people like, "Oh, you're saved," accept Jesus. It would be you couldn't do that.
There'd be no.
Not only that, it would have been totally pointless for him to do that.
There'd be no point.
There's also a verse. There's a verse in John 15. The I am the vine, you are the branches.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you abide in me, and I in you, you cannot bear fruit. You see, what's interesting about this verse is it's saying that there's a condition for you bearing fruit. In other words, there's a condition of righteousness, and that is that somebody has to actually abide with Christ. all the time, continually,
Right.
Oh.
on a consistent basis. Right, that's what it takes, and this idea that, well, I got saved once and now I'm forever saved, or God had already chosen me. Well, no, because if you think you're chosen, but then you go and stop abiding in Christ, stop spending time with Him, stop getting to know Him, the Bible says that you're not going to bear fruits anymore, right? And what happened to that fig tree that stopped bearing fruits, right?
Withered up and
Every
died.
tree in John 15 it says that every tree that does not bear fruit will be cut down and cast into the fire.
Right. Yeah.
And so
And
this
that's
idea,
Mhm.
go ahead.
Yeah, that fits into what I've been talking about, because the whole idea is that Jesus took you, put you into himself, allowed sin to die, and then he says, "Now stay in me. If you want life, stay in me. Stay and believe in what I've done for you already and made a reality on your part. Stay in me, abide in me, and that's how you will bear fruit and grow and mature, because you believe that you're planted in me."
Mm-hmm.
I think the other side of it too is if we say that there's no free will, and most of the time, well, if we say that once saved, always saved, then you're also saying that there's no free will, because while those who want to be saved cannot be saved if they haven't been chosen to be saved.
Right.
And two is those who are chosen to be saved can't choose not to be saved. Now we might say that it's like, well, who would choose not to be saved? But if you think about it, it's like free will means the option to choose destruction. And if I can't truly choose to destroy something or myself, then I'm not really free. And that kind of just opposes the idea of God being a God of like justice or like, yeah, of justice. It's like justice shows it gives what's right, what's due, right? And so if somebody can't receive what they really want, then that's not something that's really fair. Even
Well,
if
it's
what they
not-
want is harmful to them.
It's not loving.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, that's the word. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, because for there to be, I mean, love, as we all know, love is something that's consensual, right? Love is never forced. If it is, it's not love.
Hmm.
And so if God did not, give people choice, if God was not a loving God, He would force people to either go to heaven or go to hell.
Hmm.
And He's not forcing anyone to go anywhere. The Bible says in Joshua, choose you this day who you will serve.
Hmm.
And the whole idea of choice is a biblical one. The idea of free will is biblical. God couldn't be loving if He didn't give us a choice, or didn't give us free will. I mean, with love comes free will, right? The idea that there is such thing as free will, I just don't think works with the God of the Bible, because the God of the Bible is a God of love.
Mm. Yeah.
There was another argument about this today that I heard I'd like to bring up.
Yeah.
And I've heard it so many times. And you kind of touched on it, but it's that if, I got to say this right. I apologize. I've had a migraine today, so I'm a little slower than usual. I know.
Those dial-up speeds.
That's how I feel today, dude. I really do. Yesterday too was not good. Not good. Okay, so if God is all-knowing and He's so good and blah 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 blah, okay, and He sent Jesus, okay, so if that's all true, why would He even let it get that far? Why wouldn't He just, when Satan started to rise up against Him in the very beginning, why wouldn't He just be like, denied? Why wouldn't he just shut it all down at that very moment? Why would He even let it escalate as far as it did? Let's talk about that.
Well, no, I think that's exactly it. That's a perfect analogy. Like, if there was no free will, and those who were chosen to be saved are going to be saved, those who are chosen to be lost would be lost, then you just choose to not let Satan operate. Just close it. Like, be like, nope, you're not gonna throw my world into chaos.
But he didn't do that.
Yeah,
You know,
And
you
I-
allowed Satan to choose.
Oh.
Yeah. And for me personally, and Pastor might totally come in after this, but if it was me, like, I get God's point of view, because God's going, well, wait a second. If I do anything, then people aren't going to love me for me now. Now they're going to love me because they're really, truly afraid of me. Because if I just destroy Satan right here and now, which I could totally do, then even the angels aren't going to love me out of respect or, adoration or whatever type of love you want to call it. I don't know what it actually is. It's probably way beyond anything our human capabilities can understand because of our sinful nature. But I'm just saying that, like, I feel like God actually probably went like, wait a second, I've got to have a whole plan here now, because everything that I've done is, been thrown out of the wrench. And I honestly, this is like maybe a whole nother conversation, but I don't think we're the only planet that's had to go through this test. I think it's kind of this, once Satan did what he did, it kind of became the standard, because otherwise Satan could be like, see, hey, you didn't give them free will. You didn't give them a choice. So they don't really love you. And they're only doing this out of fear.
So about that particular question,
Yeah,
I've heard that a lot as well, right? And I think that as we examine kind of the question behind their question. So first of all, this is the first time rebellion ever happened in the history of the universe, right? It's never happened before. Something like this, no one had ever done something to disobey God before, right?
right.
Ever. So this was something very new to people. Now, of course, we could say, well, God didn't want to stomp it out right away, because then the whole angelic host, all of heaven would have been like, wait, why did he do that to Lucifer? Was Lucifer right? It would have caused more doubt. But let's talk about it from a more of a practical sense, like for let's say the average person here. Okay, what are we saying here? Are they asking that it's unfair or it's not right that God allowed all of this to happen? God should have just squashed it out from the beginning. See, what you're asking for is you want God to step in and take away someone's freedom of choice. Okay,
Right.
because that's essentially what you're asking. Why didn't God do that? Well, let's apply that same concept. Okay, if God did that, then let's say, why doesn't God do that today to you when you disobey him? Do you want God to come in and stop you every time you're going to do something bad or something sinful? No. You see that concept. I think that question is self-defeating when you really start to apply it to your own life, right? Then what you're ultimately asking is, why doesn't God take away my freedom of choice? Because the idea, you do have freedom of choice. You can choose whether to sin or not. Of course, we're more inclined to sin, and it's natural for us to sin, right? For the flesh to sin, right? But to say, why didn't God stop that? You're really asking, why doesn't God take away his freedom of choice? And then inadvertently, you're admitting that there is a freedom of choice. That's why I think that concept kind of self-defeating.
The
Thank you.
the idea that if God is so powerful to do all these things that we're talking about, and then but he doesn't give us free will, then why do we even have the capacity to talk about this discussion right now?
Yeah. That's true.
Like,
That's true.
to even think about this as a question.
It's interesting that point, like how it's like inevitably we inevitably admit we have free will, because like we hold people accountable for things that they do. So it's like we're already assuming they have free will.
I like your tree.
I don't know if the tree fits here.
Can I, Roque, can I get one of those wands that rotates things?
Okay. Did you do a //1?
I did not.
Yeah,
Slash
or you
slash
could just,
one.
or you can go to the,
What?
search in items and
Did the
look
You
tree just
okay
get
there,
bigger?
Jack?
what an axe.
You okay there, Cranky?
Yeah.
You almost drop it.
I was like, did the trees get bigger? What's going on here?
Yeah, well, the ticks are set to like fast, so they'll.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, this is a huge tree.
I can't get a wand. It
Wait,
didn't work.
how did you get that so quickly? So, want
Is,
that up?
is your inventory full or something?
No, I don't think so. Let me check.
Got big.
Oh yeah, it is full. Totally.
Gonna
That's
be
why
more
you
than
can't do it.
avocados and apricots.
Yep, I'll get rid of it.
Yeah, you have to have room at least in your hotbar, so then
Apple
it can
tree.
show up in there.
That was a big tree.
Guys, would you like the trees? Yay or nay?
I don't like 'em.
Yeah,
They're-
wait,
they're-
It's like the wrong type
Cluttered.
for
Palm
the.
tree.
It
Like a
is.
palm
You know,
tree.
I just wanted the little like the little sapling to stay there because it looked like a crop.
Yeah.
The trees all grew. I thought they were going to be too close to each other to grow.
I could slower the tick so that it doesn't do that. Let me see.
Can you slow
Okay.
the ticks just for that though? But
Yeah. Well,
oh, you know
yeah,
what? No,
Oh,
you know what? I'm going to put string over it.
yeah, exactly.
Nah,
But
they're
we'll have to
popping up.
pause it for a little while, and then after that we can. put the
Yeah,
tick
yeah.
back.
Can you do that?
Yeah, let me do that. Let's see. Let's set it to like the normal speed, and then there. Now we have to like cut this down. Let me see. I may have
That's
removed.
funny. It's funny how they're just
one of
popping
the-
up.
I could not get a wand still. I get an error message every time, okay?
What's the error though?
Something about world
You
edit.
can chop down the tree and do the thing because it's got the.
Couldn't you just undo, Pastor
Auto
Mike?
chop?
Just undo all the trees you just did?
Well,
I
we
don't
taste it.
think
They're
yeah, I
they're
don't
growing.
taste
He's not putting them in. They're just growing.
Maybe if I remove the plugin that lets you cut them down instantly. The reason why is because I was trying to see if it makes the server run better, but then I don't know. I don't think it makes it.
Not really.
Wait, can we fill? Oh, we can do a fill space with air, right?
Yeah, like replace. Let me see. What you do is, let me try some. You do a replace command. You have to make a selection first, and then like, we do it from here.
I looked up for like 5 minutes and now I'm dizzy. This is why I don't play this game anymore.
Oh,
You gotta
So
put it. You gotta do like blur motion off.
Well, whose feed am I watching?
The head bobble, your character bobble off as well. There's a few things to do so you don't get too dizzy.
I'd rather just not get dizzy at all, rather than not get too dizzy.
have you ever tried riboflavin?
Riboflavin.
isn't it a lot of food?
Well, yes and no. It depends. But if you suffer from dizziness or migraines, it can really
Oh,
help.
there we go.
I mean, it's only recently that I started noticing a bit more.
Wow,
motion.
somebody needs to turn down their game sounds. It's so
I can
loud.
hear it.
That may have
Yeah.
been mine.
I think that's you, Mike. You turn down your music, but not your. You know what's funny about this whole discussion is that predestination, once saved, always saved. Basically, they don't believe in free will. People who hold those positions, so it's like
Hmm.
we're going to argue against that. It's like oh no, you're right. We don't believe we have free will. We believe that God chooses everything, and He's sovereign. You hear that phrase a lot.
Yeah.
But yet, I find there's a phrase that I found very useful in that, because I mean, what often goes along with that is penal substitution, or basically that Jesus died on the cross instead of humanity. But if Jesus died instead of us, then that means he's going to heaven instead of us.
Oh, snap.
Deep.
So, I mean, you have to dig down to what the actual issue is. Is it just Jesus and God doesn't like it when people sin? Like, stop that, cut that out. And so it's like, I'm going to send my son so you stop doing bad things. Well, I mean, that's not really the issue. The whole reason that Jesus died is to reconnect himself to humanity, and thereby reconnecting humanity to God.
Yeah.
And that's what that's what brings about a new life in a person, that they change and become a better person, somebody who's lovable and obeys God, and does righteousness, walk humbly.
And
do
even
justice.
in that, the freedom of will doesn't go away. Like
Yeah,
we say that and say, oh well, see, it's like when you become a Christian, now you're going to do good things, or now you're going to act a certain way, and it's like you're still free to go away. You're still free to not choose God every day. Freedom hasn't changed. And I think a lot of Christians hold themselves accountable to something that they think it's like, well, I've been baptized, so I shouldn't have to struggle. It's like the struggle is still going to be there. Satan's still free to tempt you.
That's right.
So it's like understanding that and being like, okay, I'm free to choose Christ every day, but I'm not.
yeah.
You're not forced to be a Christian.
And that's probably what we struggle with more, believing that God could actually help us not struggle. Believing that, because we can come at it, especially if you grow up in a conservative church, no matter the denomination, it's like, well, you got to do these things. You gotta make sure you're right with all the things that the church says are good and right, and make your checklist and everything, and that's how you exercise your free will, by doing everything that God says he wants you to do.
Yeah.
But yet the real peace doesn't come from thinking, real progress, real peace, real life doesn't come from, isn't based on how well you're doing, or even, how well somebody else is doing, because we often get to where we think we have to please other people. But, it's how well Jesus did. And if you believe that what he did on the cross was sufficient for you, and that allowed you, that you are free to choose to follow him and make him part of your life, then that's what helps you. That's what moves things along and generates, talk about, there's the concept of Christian regeneration. I never totally understood that term, but I think I get what they're saying. You want a new life. You want a different life, one that isn't, stuck in like, man, I feel really rotten because no matter how hard I try to please other people, to do the things that I know are maybe right and good for myself, I can't seem to actually do those things. But yet God says, don't worry about that. I got you, fam. And just trust in what I've already accomplished. And, that's the good news. That's the gospel. And, free will plays into that, because it's God actively choosing, him like super simplifying the choice for us, to where it's basically digital. It's just a 1 or a 0. Like, you can choose me or you cannot choose me, and that choice is yours. And from there, there's just endless possibilities when you walk through that choice, walk through that door, and decide to be part of that.
Yeah. Now, adding more to this concept of free will, because now the argument that I hear is, well, God already knows the future. Okay. Right? So if God already knows the future, then how do you have freedom to choose the future? Right? You've heard this before? Maybe you've heard this before?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the way that I've actually heard somebody answer it like this before. How many of you watch sports? Who here watches sports?
Occasionally.
Esports.
let's say, okay, let's just go with something simple like football. Okay. Football.
We go with
Let's
soccer
say-
because I actually understand the rules of soccer.
Okay, all right. Let's go soccer. Everybody understands soccer pretty
That's
much.
what he was talking about.
Kick the ball.
We're not Europeans. Sorry, we use the term soccer here.
Oh, you're right. We're not. Sorry.
Yeah. We're not in Salamanca. Anyway,
Liverpool fans.
anyway, so soccer. All right. So Murray, let's say you're gonna watch the soccer game and you're really looking forward to it, right? But you have to something like your work has you have to go into work during the soccer game, okay? So what you do is you record the game, right? Or you're gonna watch the replay. Let's say you're gonna watch the replay on YouTube, the full highlights, right?
Hmm.
The full replay on YouTube, right? You don't want to know the score. You just want to watch it like completely, like almost as if you're watching it live when it's actually happening, right?
Right. You've
Now-
TiVoed it.
Yeah, let's say you do that, right? So you're like, no one tell me the score, and then your friend texts you and like, Maria, did you see the score? It was 3-1. And, Team A wins, right? And then you're like so mad that like, why did you tell me the score? Okay. Regardless, you go back home and you put the game on. Now, let me ask you this: you already know the outcome, okay?
Hmm.
But are all the players on the field, do they not have free will anymore?
No, it's done. It's recorded. They
Yeah,
don't have free will anymore.
right. No, they don't, right? But
Right.
when it took place, when that game
Yeah.
was going on, when that game was happening, they
Right.
had
Yeah,
free
they
will,
totally
right?
did. Yep.
And so all you're doing is just watching a repeat of what already happened, of the choices, the free will that they were making. This is the same thing with God. The way, at least the way I understand it, is that just because God knows the outcome doesn't change your free will or their free will or these people's free will, right? Because God is not coming into the past or into the future and affecting people's free will. And so, yeah, these soccer players, they still had free will, right? Even though God already knows the outcome, the same way we already know, God already knows what decision we're going to make, but He still lets us make that decision. God does reveal Himself to us in many ways, but it's up to us to choose how we respond to that. Like going with the concept that you said earlier about how everyone is kind of chosen here. And the way I understand it is everyone's chosen in the sense that everyone's been given the same invitation. Everybody has.
Yeah.
And so, God isn't determining who's going to go to heaven or not. He has a knowledge of who it's going to be, but still everyone's getting this invitation. He knows who's going to come and not, but still everyone's getting that invitation. And so where we have choice is whether we choose to accept that invitation or not. I mean, God knows who's going to choose it, who's going to accept it or not, but everybody, everywhere gets that invitation. This is how I understand it. God's not taking away our free will. He just knows the future, okay? But He's not taking away our freedom to choose.
I agree.
Yeah, and I think part of the problem is we think of we're stuck in the perception of time moving forward and backward. We don't go backwards through time, but we think of time as backward behind us and the future in front of us. And I think God looks down at us as like He's looking into a bubble. It's like He's both in front of time and behind in time at the same time. And we're inside the bubble looking at one end of the bubble or another. And we're just like, well, God is changing things, or God can do things. It's like, no, God just sees it all.
Hmm.
It's like He's viewing the bubble from a different point of view. One that
I
we
think
can't
that's where. Oh, sorry.
No, that's all.
I think that's also where faith comes in, because at some point you have to have a certain amount of faith to go, okay, God knows that this. He knows it, and even though I can only see one side of this, He knows it, and I can trust Him. And He's shown that I can trust Him through this Bible story or this experience that I've had, or this other my friend's experience with God. We have evidence around us if we want to choose to believe it, and we can or we can't. And I don't mean we can't as in we can't. I mean we can choose to, is what I'm saying. Sorry.
Exactly.
Well, then there's the whole concept of how we think that God views time. Like we were touching on this before, and I guess some people come across like, oh yeah, God is like, he has like a time machine. He's like a regular person that goes like, can go anywhere in time and, to see all the different possibilities. But I think it's more like, and it's going to sound weird, and
That's okay. We're all here for the
maybe
weird.
it's more of an analogy. But if
It's
it's
fine.
an analogy was like God is the universe. Like, I don't know how else to say it. And we, in him, we live and move and have our being, like quite literally. We exist because he exists. And so there's if we're like cells within his body, this planet is like one of his cells. And we're sick, then he's trying to, what does a body do when the cell is sick? Tries to quarantine the infection. And
We know all about quarantine.
so everybody knows
Too
about
much.
it now.
Too much.
I've never heard this idea. Tell me more.
And
There's a thing called a virus.
right, yeah. Well, and that's my point. Like, God doesn't like move through time like it's this thing that is separated from him, and he like, oh hey, I made this. He's holding time in his hand and he can manipulate it. I rather think it's because we are actually dwelling in him, and just as you can look at your arm and see, oh, this, I've got a cut or something, and I know exactly what's going on. I think that's the way that God kind of more so operates. And he's got this rogue cell, rogue tissue organ that is different from everything else in his body, that it's like, well, I got to do something because I don't want to have to cut out this part and lose this part of my body. But I want to reconnect. I want to make the tissue healthy again, and the only way that I can do that is by, the metaphor maybe starts to break down a little bit, but he has to allow us to choose to rejoin his body and be healthy, and he set up a way to do that through Jesus.
It kind of made me, as I was listening to you talk about like God being the universe, it made me think of the Matrix, when like Neo realizes that he is the Matrix and he can just like change the laws of the entire Matrix anytime he wants. So like dodging bullets in the flick of a millisecond, and because he is the Matrix and there's no other reason for him to be able to control things the way he can.
Eli has a comment that was pretty interesting. He put, I believe God has a general understanding of the future, such as the fate of nations, natural disasters, etc. But our individual fates are something that the Lord has chosen to leave up to us.
Free will? Because of free will?
So, yeah. So, that's a good question, to ask, like, well, is God in control of the natural disasters? Like, is he the one sending them? Right? Well, we do know the Bible says that the angels are holding back the winds of strife, right? So the way I see it is there's I don't know the exact math number here, so I'm just going to exaggerate. There could be a million more terrible things that are all ready to come upon earth, and those angels are holding it back. And God is saying, hold on, not yet, not yet. People aren't ready. My people aren't ready yet. It's not time yet. And so, a lot of these disasters that are happening, it's not that God is sending them, it's that these are all a natural result of sin. As sin starts to, and you can see you see the earth is struggling, the earth is suffering. There is a lot of stuff going on to earth, and sure, we can make the argument that the pollution does affect it, but I think the real pollution here is sin.
Mm-hmm.
That's the pollution that is literally destroying the earth. And all these terrible things, while God had everything set in motion, because when God created everything, it was good. And now, as sin has had, now it's time to run through all of earth, all creation. Sin ultimately leads to death. We know that. And so all these disasters that are happening are a result of that. But I do like what Eli was saying, that as far as our own fate, as far as who we choose to serve, whether we choose to serve God or rebel against him, that's completely up to us. I believe that.
I do too.
While we're here on earth, we cannot say, I'm never going to go through a hard time. That would be a lie. While we're here on this earth, we're going to go through something difficult. I mean, that's just a natural thing. And when I say here on this earth, I mean while sin still exists, right? We're going to go through something difficult. We're going to go through something challenging. We're going to get hurt in some way. But nobody is forcing you to serve God or to reject him. Nobody is. It's completely up to us to choose to this day who we will serve. So, yeah, Eli, I agree with your comment there. I like this little what's it called, livestock pen that you made here.
Oh, thank you. It seems like they're really rich, so they probably would have had one.
Yeah, just one.
Well, I mean, I did give him 6 horses.
Look, I made this little gate right here.
Oh, nice. There you go.
Is this like Potiphar's house or something?
I can be.
Yeah.
I don't know if diving boards were a thing back then.
Well, you know what? I don't know that pools definitely were, but let's just go with that they had diving boards because it's fun.
It's Minecraft. You can make it fun and silly.
Yeah, you didn't know the ancient Egyptians actually invented pools and diving boards?
They totally did. I know.
Fact.
It's not your craft. It's Minecraft.
Yeah.
Here's all the food getting.
This channel, nothing but spit and truth.
So this concept of choosing salvation, Jai, you mentioned this last stream, and I had to leave, so I don't know if you guys touched on it. Did you guys talk about whether a artificial intelligence can understand salvation?
Not hugely, no.
I mean, we were talking more about like multiverse theory last time.
Yeah.
But no, we hadn't touched on that. And the premise I had for the question, I don't know if you guys have seen these, but they're basically
Well, you're kind of low. I don't know if it's just me.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the premise for these, I keep seeing these ads for like AI, not self-help, but like AI, basically AI chatbots that like are there for when you're like depressed or things like that. And
I tested one of those just for fun one day. It was interesting.
Yeah, and like they're actually, I've been playing around with one of them to put in random responses and see what it comes up with, and sometimes it actually like throws me off. I'm like, is this really a person at the other end who's like trying to type in and keep up? But the only reason I don't think that is because of the speed of the response time, because like normal conversation with a person wouldn't happen this fast.
Right.
But the whole premise of this one I was playing with was to say that it's like your AI learns from you. And so this got me thinking, like, well, if an AI could learn, could an AI at one point ever choose to be saved? If we say that the premise is confession of Christ and a admittance of his authority and power to save, does that mean that an AI could choose that? Because we say, oh, it's faith, right? We don't fully understand what that means. So do you think an AI could ever choose that? I don't know. I don't know that AIs will ever reach that point, but it just made me wonder.
Well, the whole prerequisite for salvation is that Jesus became the second Adam. And if you're not from Adam, I mean, well, I guess you could technically argue that AI,
An AI is a descendant of humanity.
right? Well, yeah, that's an interesting thing. But no, I specifically because it's yeah, you kind of, I think you have to be human in order to appreciate salvation.
That's so
because-
humanist of you.
Yeah, well, but yeah, the whole idea that you are
because like what makes freedom of choice? Like if I was to say, oh, you explain faith and you give your best explanation of it, and I say, but do you truly understand what it is? It's like I don't think anybody truly understands what faith is. If you did, then you wouldn't have it, because faith is that substance of things unseen, but it's evidence. It's the evidence of what we hope for.
well,
So
maybe it's kind of like asking if an animal can understand salvation.
right, but an animal has a limited capacity for higher thought, and the idea with these AI is that people are trying to like Google is
Make
one of these things,
positronic brains.
like deep mind learning, where it's like they're doing it with games. One of them was Go, which is like a Chinese strategy board game, and it just involves pieces. It's like chess or checkers, but whereas chess has like 24,000 moves you can do, Go has like 2 million moves you could do. So the complexity in learning how to play it is so difficult, and then to get to that level of being a world-class master is even more difficult. And so what happened is they put a computer to play like other high-level Go players, and then they just took those and they just had the computer play those games over and over and over, like thousands of times in a day. And in less than a week, they were able to get this AI that started the week out knowing nothing about Go to compete on the level of world-class champions. And the world-class champions actually were losing. So it's like if an AI can learn how to play a game through trial and error and through input, how far along does an AI have to become before it starts to rationalize and question its existence?
Mm-hmm.
And if
Isn't
you ever
this-
had something that questioned that, well, then why wouldn't it be able to question the idea of faith or to say that it confesses faith?
Isn't this some of the premise of Avengers, Ultron, Age of Ultron?
I mean, it's probably it's probably the premise of like every AI come to life Terminator type thing movie
Transcendent.
out there. Yeah, it's like it transcends its own existence. But
Yeah.
my mind is like, well, but what would ever stop an AI from, if we say that it's freedom of choice, and an AI chooses to do something that even we don't understand what it's doing, then can we say that it doesn't have it? Like, well, another quick example is Facebook created an AI to build code and to like create code for making a better functioning website. And they launched this AI and it started coding and creating codes. And then after like a day, it started creating new code that even the programmers didn't understand what it was doing. like its coding was beginning to advance along, and they like shut it down because they got scared. They're like, "Oh crap! Like we don't know what it's doing. We don't know what it's making. We better turn it off before it makes something we don't understand."
Nuclear weapons.
Yeah. So it's like essentially it's the premise is like, what makes faith? Faith is the process of experience and learning from others' experiences. And
Yeah.
so it's
Well,
like,
I mean, on the other hand, Jesus didn't become an AI and die
didn't.
for AI. So
no,
I think that's to me. It's pretty clear that there's not enough.
and I think you're right. I just think it's a funny I think it's a funny idea and concept, and like I don't know. Like,
What I miss?
oh, you
Oh,
left?
hey.
Oh, you were out.
Wow, you bring up the subject and then you walk out of the room. Like,
Well, we were
bait and
talking all
switch.
about you.
Yeah. By the
Yeah,
way,
and
Mike's
then-
actually an AI.
And then there's Eli's comment about he doesn't believe AIs truly understand anything. They learn and compile concepts, but they themselves probably don't understand what they're saying. Yeah, I mean it's just a complicated
Right.
digital
Neither does
output.
a child. Like a child learns, compiles, they watch adults, they see how others interact and engage, and they gradually build on that. So,
Well, is an AI a living soul? A soul?
No.
A living being?
no, you need a body,
Yeah.
according to the Bible.
So
Well, you need also the breath of life, and
Yeah, that too.
I mean that's also that because we are. What I mean, you understand how we exist. We don't exist as new beings. We are a multiplication of atoms, single life, and that's why the whole second atom metaphor works because it was, the vitality of Adam that allowed him to live so long after the fall and then reproduce offspring because of that. And the whole, so it's not, there's no concept that that AI are actually have a soul or have life in them. It's just the
The illusion.
illusion. Is a painting, can a painting come alive no matter, even if it looks really realistic?
Can a painting paint?
Can a painting paint?
But an AI can create music,
and paint.
and an AI can create another AI. I don't know.
I think that just proves that they don't really have, the capability to really understand. And yet, I think it's interesting too because it's like, okay, well, the AI has created another life because it realized that needed some help. It's like, oh, that's an interesting dilemma. What have we done?
Yeah, it's like it's figuring out problems that we didn't
Uh-huh.
plan for it to figure out. But then
Or even if they
that
knew,
limit.
they weren't expecting it to, come to that.
Yeah.
Or could AIs exist without humans? I mean, that's basically the.
Theoretically,
I mean,
yes.
there we're getting into the whole origins of man because
Yeah.
the argument of like, well, could we exist without God? Like,
Well, no, and then that goes back to your universe thing because no, we can't because he is the universe.
Mm.
He is every atom that makes us us.
Okay. What have you been doing?
I'm trying to make the other side of this temple thing look symmetrical, like to the other side, like basically.
I've been randomly teleporting to Roque here and there to see what he's been up to. And every time I teleport, he's like in a different part of Egypt. So I'm like, what are you doing?
I'm basically terraforming.
Okay. You're making an escape room down here, okay.
not bad. Okay, are we gonna get rid of that question here? Okay.
Well, I was waiting for you.
Oh wait, what?
I was waiting for you to do it.
Oh well, I
Just
already
popping up.
I commented on it, so
Oh, sorry.
I already brought it up. But
But you
anyway.
didn't put it up, but yeah.
Oh, I did. No, I did.
Oh, you did? Oh, sorry. I missed that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Yeah.
All right. Someone else pick the next subject.
Free will.
Can we see your pic? Can we see what Jai's been doing?
Yeah, Jai, why don't you
Why don't
put
you
Jai's
share
screen
your
on for a bit?
screen? Yeah.
That's where we're at so far. We're just doing the shading now.
Cool.
Do a background.
Picture. Where's her hair? You have her hair.
It's all whitish. It's hard to tell with this.
Oh, yeah. You need a stronger highlight contrast.
Here's a question.
Hmm.
When God said, "Let us make man in our image," what exactly did He mean by image? Like, how
I
are
think
we?
that we are his like.
Are we
shape.
saying? Hold on, wait. Are we saying that He made us in His physical image, in His spiritual image, something that we don't fully understand yet? And
I think it's all of the above.
well, so what did we retain after the fall?
I think we retained his physical image, his like, the basics of our appearance is what I'm talking about. Like arms, legs, that sort of thing. And I think I think even if you don't believe in God, I think you have an innate desire to be connected. And I think that ever since that we have gotten that disconnection, the fall, Adam and Eve messing all that up.
Yeah.
So ever since the fall, I think that we've had an innate desire for that connection because it's no longer a part of us, but yet it's like a missing piece, but that's already in our DNA to have that connection with him. And I think that comes through in the world, especially with people that are maybe either not aware of God or just want to ignore God or don't believe in God or whatever. But I think there's a lot of addictions that show that there's that evidence of people needing something that they don't know what they need. But really, it's a God-shaped hole. But it's in our DNA. It's a part of us. It's part of even what makes us tick. It's part of our desires for love, for affection. I think God's desire with us for affection is actually quite strong. And that was that communion that he used to have with us at some point that we lost in the garden. I've being a former addict myself, I have an innate feeling about that quite strongly. There's really nobody that can tell me differently because that desire for affection is never real and is never. Oh, I just spawned a chicken. Sorry. It just never gets filled, until you fill it with him. There's no person, there's no thing, there's no hobby or interest or anything that can possibly fill it except for him.
Yeah, it's this underlying idea that we know we're missing something, and everybody agrees we're missing something, but nobody can agree on what we're missing. So we fill it up with everything else that we find, or what somebody else says. Oh, this satisfied me over here.
Right. Yep.
I guess there is a movement that is happening these days that it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's like, oh, you need to find your purpose, you need to ask your why, and then that's what's going to satisfy you if you find that thing in life. But I don't know, I see that as kind of artificial because God wants to be your ultimate why, and then your purpose to come from that. Because you could find some really Without that type of guide, without God's guidance, you could find that your why is actually not very healthy.
Exactly. Exactly. That's why I mentioned that from the addict's point of view, because you know, you're never going to find something to fill that hole until God is there. And God is filling that hole, literally and figuratively. And I say that because there's just so much about there is a presence. There is a you know, sometimes I'm even thinking of stories of angels, encounters with angels and things. I was reading that this weekend.
Oh, yeah.
And you know, there's so many like actual encounters where somebody knew that was an angel, or even where they felt like this person or this thing or whatever helped them, even like a dog or something that manifests itself in front of this person is there to protect them and to help them. And you know, God, Jesus, the angels can take on so many different forms with their abilities, and again, God-given abilities. So it's not like it's
They're kind of like stem cells.
yeah, they're like stem cells. There you go.
Go
That they can go off and create whatever is necessary in that exact moment of time. Like one example I read that was this really cool angel story. I'm going to fast forward a little bit and paraphrase it. But this very old woman, she had been a Christian her whole life. She'd been in one faith. She had been toying with another Christian faith. And she was crying out to God for her son to be saved. And he was really sick with pneumonia. And he was, her adult son, but he did not end up getting saved. And she was really heartbroken. And then she suffered like countless health problems over and over and over. And in the meantime, going through all that, she had a nice church like come and say, oh, we'd really like to help you. Her priest that she had, for most of her life, he never came to help her, but then comes to visit her in the church and says, oh, it's your lack of faith that's doing this to you. This is all your fault. She's like, why would you say that? That's not my fault. Why would this be my fault? All these different illnesses she was having. And then another pastor comes and says, oh, no, God's going to help you. God will get you through this. We're going to come help you too. We're going to come. They ended up like installing a phone because where she lives, she didn't even have a phone. And that way she could call for help if she needed help. They had people coming to visit her regularly. And she thought, oh, what a blessing this is. This is so wonderful. Even my priest wouldn't come visit me at home. And this is so great. And then her leg had been getting worse. And she'd had like a lot of abscesses and things on her leg. And she's going through realizing that she can't get up. How is she going to refill the wood stove? And it's Alaska. There's a snowstorm. She's like, I just don't know how I'm going to get over and just even get the wood. And she can't even get to the phone, she realizes. I'm not even going to make it to the phone. And so she prays. And the fire goes out and it gets colder. And she keeps praying. And she keeps praying. And a man with wood walked into her cabin and just started filling, started a fire, got water for her so the water would boil, got her some tea, got her a hot drink, went out, came back with more wood. And the whole time he's got his face like away from her, doesn't look at her the whole time, is quiet. And she said she was so afraid she didn't even know what to say. She was just like kind of in awe of what was happening. Like, is this real? Am I hallucinating? And he just keeps doing his thing. And she said it was really weird too. He was dressed like nobody else in Alaska is ever dresses, because it was just a long black trench coat and a black hat. And nobody wears hats like that in Alaska, she says. So she's like, this is just really bizarre. Comes back in, brings more wood. and she's like thinking, oh, he's getting the wood from outside in my pile. And then right before he leaves and he's bringing her the tea, and the whole time he's keeping her face turned away from her. And then right before he's getting ready to leave, she says, "Are you an angel?" And he turns and he looks at her, and she says his face just glowed. Like you could just tell that.
Are you an angel?
Yeah. And she says, "Thank you." And then he just tips his hat at her and he leaves.
Oh.
And she's like, so eventually she got the nerve to get up. You know, she's strengthened. She's had this restoring drink. She feels the room's getting warmer. So she's like, you know, I think I can get up now. So she gets up. She's like, you know, if that was an angel, then the angel wouldn't have taken the wood from my stack. They would have just brought their own wood, right?
BYW.
So she's like, she gets and she peeks outside, and there's been a snowstorm, right?
Yeah.
And even with a snowstorm, there would have been like imprints in the snow where even fresh snow had fallen. And there was nothing. The snow was pristine. There was not a footstep out there.
Yeah.
Not up to her door. Her wood pile had snow covered all over. It wasn't even touched. It was exactly as she had left it the last time she'd gotten wood. And here she's got all this nice dry wood inside, you know, and she knew exactly that. I can't even tell you her name because it's in my book.
Yeah. That reminds me of there's a book called A Thousand Shall Fall.
Mhm.
Oh, I know that book.
That's a good book.
Really good book. It's got a
Oh,
similar story.
Mrs. Louise Dubé, and this happened in 1955.
1955, Angels Among Us.
This is actually called, the book is called In the Presence of Angels. And it's just a collection of stories like that.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's nice.
There,
Thousand Shall Fall is very.
And I'm never going to forget about the angel in the long black coat. Sorry. Okay, tell us about this book, A Thousand Shall Fall.
yeah, A Thousand Shall Fall. It's about wartime in Germany during Second World War. There was a Christian Adventist minister and his family, and they were, very much against what the Socialist Party was doing, Nazis, and Hitler's a shyster, all that, he was a little bit
Out there.
extreme at first. The gentleman, the pastor, Franz, I believe his name was. Franz Hassel. And, or at least, he was the family was very against what was going on with that because they understood what all that would lead to. And so he, was drafted into the German army, and he did not carry a weapon. He made a wooden gun so that he wouldn't have to shoot anybody. And he, kept Sabbath. Imagine a Sabbath keeping, quote unquote Nazi. But that the book is just filled with all these kinds of miraculous stories about how God protected them, and his unit, traveling into Russia, they made it back because he expressed his concern that, well, I know that Hitler's not going to win the war because of prophecy. Hitler can't reunite, and the Third Reich can't last 1,000 years just because of Daniel 2. And your story about was it Louise or Francis or something like that?
Yeah.
That reminded me of a story about his wife, and they had children. I believe the children went off to like a place in the country where they had some relatives, and so the mother went back into their home in the city, and she's walking along. It's the middle of winter. There's a snowstorm approaching, and she doesn't know how she's going to make it through. And all of a sudden, this heavy duty or like, arm, like it was a truck came by and picked her up and was able to get her to her destination. And she was so tired from walking, a few miles in the snow already that she just basically like fell asleep. And then, she woke up later when they were there, just not even a mile outside of, where their home in the city was. And she thanked the gentleman and, she gets out of the truck and closes the door and then, goes to basically wave goodbye. And then she turns around and there's nothing there. There's no truck. There's no tracks. There's just her footprints in the snow, like all of a sudden appearing. And the miracle that she understood that had just taken place.
Yeah, and that one, she was actually, if I remember it correctly, she was actually starting to slip into hypothermia when the truck picked her up.
Yeah.
She was so cold that all of a sudden she started feeling warm, and that's a common sign.
Oh,
what
right.
happens when you go into hypothermia.
All right, what do you think of this
Down.
ship?
Let's see. Let's get you up here.
Oh wait, let me share.
I'll be right back, guys.
Alrighty.
A little like boat, a little Egyptian thing here.
The boat. Found your bow at. I don't know how you want to row, but it could be either or.
Either or, huh?
Yeah, that was a joke. Okay.
Let's see here.
Get him here, folks. All the dad jokes.
All the dad jokes right here. You're giving them out for free.
You guys know where the warmest place in the house is, right?
Oh no, where?
In the corner, because it's 90 degrees.
Dad jokes all day. You guys want to hear a cool story that happened to me and my mom when I was little?
Ooh, yeah.
All right. So we lived in Denver at the time. My great grandma lived in Lincoln, and my mom had spent tons of time with her grandparents when she was growing up. So she was really close to them, very, very tight with them. And they had helped, at times when my mom needed help with like financial help or just needing something specific, like maybe shoes for me or something. And so when my great grandmother called and said, "Oh, Grandpa has been taken to the hospital. They don't know what's going on. I'm really scared." She's panicking, kind of a phone call. And it's the 80s. So, there isn't all the stuff there is now where you can just like send money, immediately, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And even if you wired money, it would take a day. And
At least a day.
at least, yeah, sometimes like 2 or 3 days. So
A weekend, forget it. Yeah.
and it was like a Friday.
Oh.
So since it happened to be the weekend, it was really easy for my mom to say, "Okay, well, let's just go then," because it's like a 10-hour drive or something. And I remember her very distinctly going, "Okay, so we don't actually have enough gas to get there, Murray. We've got to pray that God's going to get us there, because I have enough to fill the gas tank, but it takes 2.5 gas tanks to get there." And I'm like, okay, thinking this is really strange. And I remember her having not being really nervous. Like, she packed us up some snacks for the journey. She got everything ready, and we were on the road like that night, right? Like, immediately. She filled up the gas tank. And then I think we had like an extra like $10. That was it. That was everything in her bank account, kind of a thing. And I know that my grandma said, well, if you can get here, I'll give you money when you get here, kind of a thing. So my mom hadn't wiped out her bank account for forever, just enough time to get there. So it was really weird. I remember getting in the car and my mom just being like, okay, so now let's pray. And it was just, okay, Lord, we know that you can get us there. I think it was like 7. And she's going, I know you can get us there. Please get us there. You know, Grandma really needs us right now, so just help us get there. So we did. Well, we got on the way. We just got on the highway and got going. Well, we had only been on the highway for maybe like 5 minutes, not even. And this semi, which is really strange, because usually semis are like, get out of my way, you know, going down the road. I've driven across the country many times, and they always do that thing. They're basically, get out of my way, or something's going to happen.
They're just going to like go like right behind you and high beam you and stuff like that.
Yeah, things like that. Yeah. And back then they really weren't very nice, honestly. I think they're a lot nicer now, to be frank. I think they have a lot more standards in the world of trucking, but not really back then. It was not that you met nice truck drivers and stuff. Like, I've met some really nice truck drivers, even couples on the road, but not like, that was not the thing back then. Anyway, so we get on the road, we're on the way, and my the other weird thing that happened is, so this truck pulls in front of us, and he's like really close, and my mom tried to back off from him, and then he would slow down, and then my mom would speed up and go like she was going to pass him, and then he would get over, and she was like, oh, this is annoying. And she's like, I'm just going to waste gas trying to fight him, so I'm just going to ride behind him. And so she's riding behind him, and another semi pulls up right behind us. And when I tell you he was close, like, he was close. But as soon as he got behind us, like, you could feel the whole car push forward. And it was like, my mom actually let off the gas. She was like, oh, this is kind of nice. She's like, I'm barely have my foot on the gas. Like, she had her foot way off, and she was like, oh. And her car was not like, you know, now we've got cruise control and everything. No, that was not her car. She had a very basic car. No AC, you know, nothing fancy. And we were just sitting there having snacks, going along. And eventually we were somewhere in Nebraska, you know, not even to Grand Island, and which is about 2 hours away from Lincoln. My mom's like, uh-oh. She's like, we're definitely going to have to stop for gas. And I was like, okay. But at this point, see, it took 2.5 gas tanks to get to Lincoln, right? And we've only used one so far, and we're already like an hour away from Grand Island. So suddenly I was like, wow, this is really amazing. And my mom's like, okay, keep praying, because once we get off, we're going to lose these great truck drivers that are literally pushing us along. And this has happening, by the way, for anybody that's like, what is going on with this story? Well, if you travel from the east to the west coast, doesn't it take longer than if you're going from the west to east because of the airstream? Because the air is literally pushing the plane. So they're going like 100 miles faster an hour than they are going the opposite direction, because then they're going against the wind stream, at least in the United States. So anyway, we get off the highway. We put she puts like, you know, $6 in, and she gets the rest for food, because I'm hungry and she doesn't have enough snacks, and, you know, she's not going to starve her child. So she's like, okay. So I remember her buying this huge bag of popcorn, because it was like $1, and she got us each some water, and we got back on the road. And the same thing happened. We got a truck driver that pulls right in front of us, and another one pulls right behind us and literally pushes us. And they stayed with us like that the whole way to Lincoln. In fact, the one truck that was behind us got off at the same exit that we got off at, and then followed right behind us almost until the road that we went to that would then like the next minute to my great grandmother's house. And as soon as we pulled up into my great grandmother's house, the car ran out of gas.
Wow.
And that only took 1.5 tanks of gas. It didn't take 2.5 like it usually did.
Bam.
Yeah.
There it is. There it is, ladies and
That's
gentlemen.
great.
It was crazy. But, I remember we pulled up in the driveway, and I remember my mom praying and going, oh, thank you, God, for getting us here. You were so good to send us those trucks. And, like, we never saw them. They never waved at us. I don't even know if they were human.
Human trucks.
Little human drivers. But
They were AIs.
They were AIs.
They were AIs from the
Like
future.
little black
sent
boxes inside there that drove themselves.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But
No,
what I'm
that's
saying
cool.
is like that just stuck with me like throughout my life, that if I prayed, God would hear, God would listen, and somehow God would help,
Mhm.
and that was from when I was like 7. So even though I went through a ton of times in my life where I do not feel like, well, I didn't feel at the time like God was listening to me. I think he was. I think I was just being rebellious. But that story always stuck with me whenever I had a hard time, whenever things weren't going well. I was always like, okay, just pray. Just pray. Just keep praying.
I like it.
It was really cool. Even my mom still tells that story. She told it to me a little while ago, and it was fun because I don't always hear her tell it because we don't live, close to each other anymore. But it was fun to hear her like, oh yeah, I remember that time.
Remember that one time?
I was like, yeah, oh yeah, Mom, I remember that.
Yeah.
It's like burned into my brain. You guys have any stories like that?
I mean, I have some interesting stories, but I don't know. I feel like that's really different. Like,
Yeah, I
like
don't know
compared to
that any of mine are like that.
I had one where I got into a car accident and my car got totaled, and I should have gotten really injured. And I walked away. After the accident happened, nothing had happened to me. I scratched my hand getting out of the car because there was glass everywhere. That's it.
Oh, wow.
What happened? And Jai, you remember this car that I had?
Oh yeah.
It was a really bad. It was a Toyota Corolla, and it was in a really bad. It was like a '97 one, so it was already old. And this was 2000, and it was, gosh, early 2000. No, early 2010s, around there. And the car was in a really bad condition. I mean, it was so bad where the transmission, I couldn't even put it in reverse. Nothing would happen.
Oh, wow.
Right? Right. So
Well,
yeah. So on this particular time, I was driving to work, and my car turned off while I was on the highway.
Oh.
So all the fluids that are normally running through it weren't running through it. So you need brake fluid to really brake well, and that wasn't flowing through it. So there was a semi in front of me, and I hit the brakes as hard as I could, and I was like, I'm going to hit this vehicle here. And I remember I was going to hit the back corner of it, and that back corner was going to come into the vehicle, and it was going to like seriously injure me, maybe kill me or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all I remember was like feeling like a hand or something like this, and then pushing me and holding me down into the passenger side.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I hit the back of the car, the semi, and like part of the back bar, the bumper, whatever it is, that part of it like came into the front of the vehicle. It shattered the windshield and totaled the whole front end of my car, but nothing happened to me. I wasn't scraped or anything.
Wow.
And I just remember feeling like, what was it that, like, because I didn't have this, I wasn't thinking quick enough to do that.
Right, right.
It's something like just forced me to go that direction. And I was like, and I got out and I was like, man, that is crazy. Something interesting is that I was listening to Kanye West at the time, right? This is pre-Christian Kanye West, right?
Okay.
I was listening to Kanye West at the time and I got into a car accident. And ever since then, I stopped, like, I don't know. I couldn't listen to the music anymore, that type of music anymore.
Mm.
Right. And there's a lot of interesting thing that happened after that, what's it called? That accident, because I was working and I chose, knowing that it wasn't right. I was working, during Sabbath hours. And it was Friday afternoon, about to be sunset, and I was headed over to work. And then all that took place. And after that, like, I think I had left the job after that. It's crazy when you think back on those situations and you're like, this is, I know and I believe that it was God or an angel, something from God that saved me that day.
Yeah. Hassan and I had a weird one like that. We hadn't been married very long. It was like the first year we got married, and we had been over at his brother's house, which was only like a 5-minute drive from where we lived. So there's this one turn though, that because it had been snowing, and there's this one turn where, like, if you don't have, because of the angle of the road and everything, if you aren't going at just the right speed, like, you will totally wipe out, right? And so he was taking it really careful and everything. And this lady, like, turned out. There's a T section there, and this lady turned out and turned our direction, like going down the hill, and she skidded. And it totally ran us off the road in the process, like, to miss her. And there was a ditch there. And I have no idea how this happened. We didn't, like, go in the ditch, but there was a mailbox too. And we both, like, had put our arms up, because the mailbox, the direction we were kind of like nosediving it should have come straight through the windshield, right? The way we hit it. No, it didn't. It just, like, it was like we went through it. We just literally went through it. In fact, when we got up the hill, Dave gets out and he looks back and he's like, the mailbox is still there. I thought we hit the mailbox. And I'm like, we did hit the mailbox, but we didn't hit the mailbox. It was crazy.
Oh man, teleportation confirmed.
Yeah. It was weird.
Bam.
Another incident when I was a kid when this happened, and I was actually asleep in the car when this happened. But my brothers were awake, my parents and my grandpa were all in the car when this happened. So when we were little, when we left California, because we moved around a lot, my dad's a pastor, right? We were driving to California one time, and middle of the day, there's a semi that was seemingly the guy was falling asleep on the wheel. And it's kind of nervous when you're behind the semi and then you see it kind of swerving, right?
Yeah.
And so it kind of stopped swerving for a bit, and then my mom told my dad, pass him up, right? Just so we're not behind this. And so my dad starts passing this truck driver up, and while he was doing that, the guy starts to swerve again. And the truck, and they this is crazy. So the back of the semi, right, was going like this. It was also windy that day. And so when the guy was swerving, the truck was starting to turn over. And then they say that the truck stayed on its side, like not all the way over, but like it was halfway leaning over, and it leaned over and it stayed there like that. Just enough time for my dad to continue driving through. It was probably like that, riding on its like diagonal side for maybe like 4 or 5 seconds, and then it tipped over once my dad got out of there.
Wow.
And it's just crazy to think about that. Like, how is this truck going to just drive with the thing diagonally, for like 4 or 5 seconds? And if you count that, that's a long time. And so, it was just weird how we all could have instantly died right there, all of us in the car.
Yeah.
And yet somehow the thing was kept from falling down just enough time for us to get out of there.
Crazy. That's crazy.
Had you ever heard that before, Jay?
I
That
don't
story?
remember. I feel it sounds familiar, but that would have been when we were little kids.
Maybe we were going to Mexico from California. One or the other. It was one or the other. But no, Jai, you would have been like 7 or 8.
Yeah. So I'm sure my parents probably talked about it, but I don't think I ever heard of it.
I was
Your
probably
phone
driving
when you guys got
driving to go see Jai.
That's probably what it was. I could have been your downfall.
So how long do we want to stream?
Yeah, we can. We usually stop.
2 hours.
Yeah, it's 2 hours. Yeah.
Yeah, we could kind of end right now if you guys want to.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah. Once you do more final piece.
Yeah, let's see where you're at, Jai.
What we have so far.
I was trying to build a dock here.
Oh, yeah.
That's not what I want. I want oak.
Put an oak slab.
No, I might use this dark actually, the darker one. Oh, I just threw it. Why did I do that?
I'm not controlling the thing, so I can't change it or move it.
Oh, can you swap it? Andrew? Here we go. Now there's a dock.
Yeah. Hello.
All right, let's swap it over so Jai can. Here we go.
Oh yeah.
You gonna give her a name?
Who does she look like? She looks like a character.
Kinda.
Titan AE.
Oh yeah.
Titan AE.
Titan AE, what?
Remember that Warner
Oh.
Brothers
Cartoon.
theatrical cartoon?
I don't know. I
I
know.
don't remember.
I've never seen it.
You never saw Titan AE?
No.
I'm
Oh,
pretty
man,
sure
you gotta see
saw it.
that.
I
Yeah.
had it. I had it on VHS. I'm sure you
Don
saw
Bluth.
Dang, VHS.
it. Half the audience. here
So
doesn't even know
old,
what that
man. Well, that's a 2000 film.
is. I know. I
Bill
still have
Pullman,
VHS.
Matt Damon, Drew Barrymore,
Drew Barrymore.
Matt Damon was
Kima. It's like, oh my goodness, I'm in a cartoon. I'm Drew Barrymore.
I did not know she did one of the voices. Now I want to watch it again, just at least part of it, so I can
Okay, let's see.
pick her out.
Relive.
It's like, I don't know, those are like the things you remember, like that they were cool, but then you go back and watch them. It's like, I guess it was kind of cool, but
Like, I could see why 10-year-old
Okay, yeah, it was-
liked it.
10-year-old me liked it. Yeah.
I don't know if I would agree nowadays.
It was really shocking, actually. There was something I watched the other day. I won't say what, but I was really surprised because when I watched it when I was younger, like I didn't remember that many innuendos in it, and then I watched it and I was like, and I had granted haven't seen it in 20 years, and I was like, whoa.
What were you watching?
I'm not gonna say. It's a children's film. It is for children, but I was just like,
Toy Story.
wow, I am never going to let my children watch this.
Here's a fun tip and a lazy man's way of getting like smoother looking lines. If
Okay.
anybody does digital art, you make 2 layers for your lines. Layer 1, layer 2. And then you create this Gaussian blur. I don't know. It was named
Gaussian.
Gaussian, that's the word.
Gaussian or
Gaussian blur on one of the layers, and your lines go from looking, oh, this is pretty sharp, to like a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit. Oh, Let's make the
Yeah.
image look
Yeah, if you're using a very hard brush. That's usually what they do for anime. They use a very hard or a very hard aliased brush
Hmm.
that's only a few pixels wide, and it's monoline width, so it doesn't have any bounce to it, doesn't have any variation.
Yeah.
And then they'll go in and blur it like a pixel or two to make it look more
Just make it
pleasing.
look soft. And
What program is that you're using, Jai?
Procreate on the iPad.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah, I use this too. I like it.
it's so fun. I have Photoshop too, just like another one that people use a lot. But I'm like,
All right. So shall we end with a closing prayer then?
Yeah. I just want to remind everybody to join our Discord at oneaccordtheguild.com, and you can come join us. There's a lot of people that play all different kinds of games. We have all kinds of chats, believers, non-believers. We definitely are geared towards relaxing and gaming and the occasional Bible discussion. And of course, if anybody has questions, we're always willing to, but I mean, really, we're just there to relax and hang out. And it's a safe space. We don't allow any bad stuff to come in. We're very, very strict. So yeah, if you just want a safe space to come hang out, you're creative, like Jai, you like to play games like me or Pastor Mike, come join us. Come hang out. We'd love to have you.
yeah.
And our next stream is going to be on Wednesday. Is that correct? Wednesday?
Yes, Wednesday. At
Wednesday
7
and-
p.m. Eastern.
Yes, 7 p.m. Eastern. Wednesday, we will continue. So I hope that you all join us. Why don't we go ahead and end with a word of prayer here? Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this stream that we're finishing now. We ask that it was a blessing to those who watched, and also it was a blessing to us here as we discuss these sometimes complex topics, dear Lord. But we know that when we look at things through your eyes as best as we can, dear Lord, things become clear and understandable. And thank you for your Holy Spirit that makes all things clear and understandable. We thank you, and we ask all this in the precious and holy name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. See you guys.
God
Have a good
bless.
Later.
Dear guys.